Welcome to the ISE Digital 2021. Integrated system that represents perfectly the approach of Bosch communication systems with all our brands. Bosch, Dynacord, Electroboys, RTS and Telex. And with all our products, delivering solutions for all our business segments. From installed audio, comprising public address and commercial audio via ProSound, to intercom solutions, conferencing solutions, and global communications in general. The ongoing global pandemic made 2020 especially a challenging year for all of us. But it was also accelerating some trends and was opening opportunities for things which have already existed, like remote and hybrid meetings or easily operated and remotely monitored systems. And it was creating an increased demand for communications in general. In this context, it became also clear that excellent audio quality is one major key factor for making all the experience convenient and successful. The basis for this communication is nowadays IP networking. And IP networking shall be based on public open standards to enable an easy communication and an integration of products via digital networking. With our Omnio platform and network architecture, we do exactly this, plus adding some unique features and added value for the system integrator and users to create their solutions across in all our business segments and for all applications. Enjoy now the roundtable discussion about the future of audio over IP in the AV industry, and get inspired by some of our showcase videos about products and latest solutions from Bosch Communications Systems. And we look forward to hearing from you and to let your projects become true.
Hello, my name is Paddy Baker. I'm part of the content team at Integrated Systems Europe. I was very happy to be asked by Bosch to chair this session for ISE Digital on the future of audio over IP in the AV industry. One reason I was happy to be asked is that it gives me a chance to catch up with two old colleagues who make up the panel for this session. First of all, Ethan Wetzell, platform strategist at Bosch. How are you doing, Ethan?
I'm doing just fine, Paddy. Good to see you virtually and happy to be here.
Great, me too. And Joshua Rush, VP of Marketing at Audinate. How are you doing, Josh?
Great. Happy to be here. And yeah, this is just like old times at ISE, except virtually.
Absolutely. Now, this is a potentially huge subject, and we've only got 15 minutes, but I do like a challenge. So let's start off. What is the AES 67 standard, and why is it important? Ethan, would you like to take that first?
Well, in 60 seconds or less. One of the challenges that the industry really recognized as audio over IP was really becoming prolific in the industry was many different solutions that were solving the same fundamental problem in slightly different ways. And this was an approach that wound up leading to a lot of incompatibilities and a number of different challenges for implementers and integrators out there trying to make equipment talk to each other. So AES 67 was really envisioned as a way to create a common standard for exchanging transport and audio over IP systems. And one of the really clever things about the standard itself was how it was developed to solve a certain problem and no more. So it was really architected and designed as a piece of technology that could be implemented alongside other pieces of technology or inside of existing solutions. And a really great example of that is how you've been able to see the AES 67 technology implemented inside of existing solutions like Dante, Ravenna, and a number of others to really create that layer of interoperability while at the same time retaining the discrete and unique values that each of those individual solutions brought to the table. So I think it's been a huge, huge benefit for the industry to make things easier for integrators and installers to take advantage of audio over IP, even as they traverse different solutions or different islands of technology.
Great.
Yeah, so maybe to expand on what Ethan was saying from the Dante perspective, we absolutely view AES 67 as a key interoperability component. And when we think about audio networking, one of the things we think is really important from a Dante perspective is to make sure that the ultimate solution is very easy for customers to use. And so we look at what we provide from a Dante perspective as really a complete solution that enables that ease of use. And so the connectivity component is really just the baseline. It's the fundamental layer that connects the devices together. But then through a system like Dante, we're able to add discoverability, control, monitoring, a lot of the things up the stack that really make that solution easy to use. And so we're able to, when a standard does come along like AES 67, and there's a new way to connect to other devices, we're able to fold that into Dante and still get that user experience that customers are used to, but connect to more devices.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important concept for the audience and the industry in general to really understand. When we go to trade shows or read publications or see what's going on in the industry, there's this blizzard of buzzwords and acronyms and three-letter abbreviations for technology. It can become very difficult to sort of digest and internalize everything that's going on. One way to sort of think about this is a bit of a nesting concept where you have a fully built solution that's built on building blocks of different pieces of technology that are standardized so they can be used in different ways. It's a little bit like baking a cake, right? Everybody's going to be using the same sugar, everybody's going to be using the same flour, the same eggs, the same milk, but the cakes are going to be different for different purposes. With the types of standards and technologies that we have at our disposal, we've got this ability to really take well-baked standards like AES 67 and incorporate those in ways that add additional value on top of the standard that the standard wasn't really designed to include. A great example of this is a tool like Dante Controller or Dante Domain Manager that Audinate brings along to make it easier to use those pieces of technology and really complement the whole solution. So I get asked a lot in formats like this, should I use AES 67 or should I use Dante? And it's sort of a false dichotomy because AES 67 can live inside of a Dante solution. So the answer, of course, is yes to both.
Okay. And we were chatting beforehand, and you mentioned another misconception that some people have, which is the meaning of the word proprietary, and whether that's a good thing or not. I mean, people, I think, tend to think of proprietary as meaning closed and not particularly interoperable.
Right. Yeah, and I think that gets back to my earlier point about really considering what a solution is actually based upon. A good example of this, of course, is the Omnium media networking technology that Bosch brings to the table. This is a media networking architecture that's built up using many, many different components and different solutions. For example, we incorporate Dante inside of that solution. By inheritance, we also bring along things like AES 67, but then we roll in other standards like encryption, TLS we use for securing the network. We bring in things like AES 67, another standard for control. All of the little bits and bobs that go into a solution like that are, of course, standardized and are open, but the ultimate instantiation and solution that we built using all of those components is, of course, proprietary. So sometimes that word can get thrown around as something of a scare word. And I've encouraged the audience to really dig a little bit deeper. And when you are evaluating a solution, whether it's Somnio or Dante or Livewire or anything else that's out there, really take a close look at what you are trying to achieve and what sort of interoperability you will need. And I think in most cases, you'll be pleasantly surprised as to how far you can get, still respecting the values of the different solutions that are out there, because so many of them are built on these open standards.
Josh, do you have to address this proprietary question at Audinate?
Yeah, it does come up, and Ethan really hit the nail on the head with his description, because that's our approach as well too at Audinate, is that we are built on open standards. So what we do is, again, with that goal of having the easiest ease of use at the end of the day, we handpick the different standards that we want to fold into the Dante solution. But they are absolutely standard, off the shelf IT standards that we're folding in. And as a result, it's something that plays nice on the network. It's not; these aren't foreign technologies that we're introducing, but the way we've rolled that up and bundled it together is something that's unique to Dante or Audinate.
Right. Well, I suppose we can't really have a discussion about trends without talking about the COVID pandemic, which has obviously had devastating effects to all our lives. But it has also accelerated a number of trends within the AV industry. Is that the case for audio over IP, would you say? Josh, do you want to take that first?
Sure. Yeah, I'll take that. So yeah, as you touched on, this last year has been unlike any other year I think our industry has faced. And I think all of us were looking at it and trying to figure out how trends were going to change. How does that affect the products we sell? How does it affect our customers? And I think you touched on this, Paddy. What we ended up seeing is that there were several trends that were underway that I think the pandemic has helped accelerate when it comes to audio networking. So just a few. So higher education is definitely one where we almost immediately had customers reaching out to us and trying to solve the problem of remote learning and hybrid learning. And what they were quickly realizing is there was a need for a lot more channels of audio that needed to flow bidirectionally. So you had potentially, a professor that was in a room, students in that room, students that were remote, and being able to get clear audio both directions required an upgrade on the microphone side, required an upgrade on the AV infrastructure that was in place. And then while doing that, there was the flexibility component as well too. So being able to have overflow rooms to accommodate social distancing and be able to have the same experience in a room next door, down the hall, on the other side of campus that maybe was again done to help alleviate some of the challenges that were put in place because of COVID, but could also enable new ways of learning in the future. And so that's one example where we saw a trend that was already underway. Again, the trend towards hybrid learning or remote learning that was really accelerated by the pandemic. And again, it pulled forward, I think, investment that customers were looking to put in place to enable this down the road. So we saw similar things happen in the broadcast industry with remote production, remote collaboration. We've seen similar things in corporate as corporations have looked to have a hybrid workforce moving forward. So having some people back in the conference room, some people remote. And, at the end of the day, I think audio networking gives customers that flexibility to get the audio where they need it to be, the flexibility to configure rooms differently. And again, we think this is a trend that will probably continue as well post-pandemic.
Yeah, I agree with all of that, and I think there's a couple of key points that Josh mentioned there that I'd like to reinforce. The first is definitely the flexibility that audio over IP solutions can afford to facilities or users that are out there. There were periods over the past year that things had to change very dramatically, and they had to do so quickly, requiring enormous amounts of reconfiguration and redeployment of equipment to keep things moving along as they needed to. And I think that's something that almost all of us experienced in pretty much all aspects of our lives. Being able to keep your business or keep your operations moving forward by rapidly reconfiguring and redeploying equipment is really where the flexibility of audio over IP shows one of its core values. Definitely, you could scale up and scale down very quickly and very efficiently. I think one of the other things that is also very important to recognize is, as our lives, our workplaces, and our events continue to evolve and move along some of the trends that we've seen revealed over the past year, this is another place that ease of use and ease of operation is going to become critically important. We're now all hosting our little broadcast studios from our homes for, events like this or just our day-to-day work. So as that equipment becomes not only more available to people in their residence, but becomes more diffuse throughout the workforce, and you have fewer immediate experts that are working on some of the technology, I think that that ease of use and that flexibility component is going to become increasingly important to move forward. If anything, the past year has really taught us things that we thought maybe we wouldn't have tried immediately even a year ago. We've seen that some of those things can work. And what I find really interesting is going to be how this evolves over the next few years as life begins to get back to normal. What are the workflows and habits that we retain, and what are those that we go back to the old way of doing?
Yeah. Well, time is ticking away, but we're supposed to be talking about the future of AV over IP. So what's on the horizon, and what's the ultimate end game, if there is one?
Well, speaking for myself, I think one of the things that we're really going to continue to see is, the evolution of IP in general in pretty much all of the markets that we serve. Certainly we've seen the growth of Dante in the AV industry. We're also beginning to see a lot of the impact of things like ST2110 in the broadcast industry. And all of this becomes really a push towards not only moving things onto the network, but also really adopting and implementing standards. I think that's going to continue apace going forward. We are going to see additional technologies that are brought into this, addressing things like standards. I expect we'll see broader adoption of things like AES-70 going forward. But ultimately, where I think we are headed is going to be a much more decentralized environment. That, of course, is going to require different pieces of technology, different skills from our users, but also a different way of thinking about how we build up events and facilities. And that's really what I'm looking forward to seeing as we go forward, how all of these things evolve and how we can serve those solutions as they're identified.
Josh, anything to add?
Yeah, so from our side, I would say we share a vision in that in the future, we could see everything being IP connected. And there's a lot of benefits for that. I mean, I think if you think about even a small conference room, if you get all of the speakers in their network, all the microphones network, the DSP network, it enables things like remote management of that room. It enables things like the ability to quickly reconfigure or change that room if needed. And to be able to do that, if you sort of fast forward and say, what is it going to take to have all of those devices, all of those endpoints, all of the hardware in the middle networked, that's really where we're driving some changes on the Audinate side. So there's a big move underway towards software and software-based solutions, so that we can really enable getting Dante into endpoint devices where maybe that wasn't possible before through software solutions. And the other area for us is around video, because we talk a lot about audio networking, but ultimately when you look at what that customer is implementing on their end, it's usually an audio and video setup together. And so being able to get those same benefits that I talked about in terms of the control, the manageability, the flexibility for both your audio setup and your video setup. And so that's where solutions like Dante AV really come into play, because it integrates Dante networked audio and video together to be able to have that integrated experience for those customers. So right. Those are, okay. I would say, two areas that we've been focused on as a company.
Right. Well, as I feared, time has got the better of us, so we'll have to wrap it up there. Thank you both very much for your time today, gents. Thank you to Bosch for inviting me to chair this little session. Thanks again, and goodbye.
Thank you.
Thanks all.